You might have heard of Kundalini awakening, a powerful, energetic, and spiritual experience said to radically change one's perception of reality. However, the true history and traditional meaning of Kundalini are very different to these modern myths surrounding it. In my latest video, I discussed how in traditional yogic understanding, chakras represent different levels of tattvas and are not exactly the variously colored energy centers in the body as described by New Age yoga. In this video, we'll learn that the movement of consciousness through these levels was also depicted using symbolism, serpent symbolism, which gives us a very new perspective on Kundalini. Many are surprised to learn that original yogic texts actually recognize several Kundalinis, but if you are familiar with the concept, this won't surprise you. Naturally, movement between different levels of reality can go in various directions, either towards the gross or towards the pure infinite. The movement towards gross, finite experience was seen as descending, while ascending meant movement towards the absolute, the infinite. The ancient yogis presented this movement through the levels of reality as a snake slithering through the chakras. The term Kundalini or Kundalini comes from the Sanskrit word meaning coiled or spiral. It first appears in tantric texts from the 6th to 12th century AD. These earliest references speak of divine feminine forces that are the dynamic creative principle underlying all of existence. A superficial understanding of this symbolism eventually led to the modern idea of Kundalini as a snake-like force that can be awakened from the base of your spine. While every advanced yogi knows that the spine is indeed surrounded by very special forces, this modern version of Kundalini as a local energetic phenomenon is entirely different from its original metaphysical meaning in ancient yoga tradition. The central figure in the modern popularization and misconceptions of Kundalini is a man known as Yogi Bhajan, the founder of modern Kundalini yoga. Despite his claims about dealing with ancient tradition, researcher Philip Deslip revealed in his in-depth article From Maharaj to Mahan Tantric that Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini yoga is essentially a modern synthesis he created in the late 60s, combining his own ideas with the contemporary Hatha yoga forms and spiritual elements of Sikhism. While Yogi Bhajan's teachings and yoga practices may induce intense psychophysical experiences such as visions, surges of energy, and altered states, which can be interpreted as Kundalini awakening, these intense phenomena also involve risks. They often relate to drastic changes to the autonomic nervous system or temporary oxygen deprivation in the brain, undoubtedly producing spectacular psychedelic experiences, but not necessarily something related to yogic goals. There are many cases where psychological instability and mental health issues have resulted from reckless pursuit of these Kundalini experiences. I personally know a few people who've been through that. In original tantric sources, Kundalini was never described as merely a physical or psychic energy to be forcefully unleashed. It represented the creative power and dynamism of consciousness itself, the divine feminine aspect that generates the entire manifested universe, and also the force that can reverse the process. Understanding Kundalini requires a broader philosophical knowledge related to yoga's non-dual worldview. From this perspective, all existential reality arises from the infinite field of pure consciousness. Kundalini symbolizes the ability of this primal consciousness to generate finite experiences. Ancient yogis studied the mathematical principles through which this happens and discovered a spiral-like phenomenon, which inspired them to use serpent symbolism. Some ancient schools of yoga considered ascending Kundalini to be particularly important because for them it represented the path to overcome the limitations of finite embodied existence and realizing the infinite consciousness that is our true nature. Although the concept of a powerful Kundalini awakening has captivated the modern spiritual imagination, the traditional view of Kundalini reveals one of the deepest metaphysical truths of the yoga tradition. We are embodiments of infinite consciousness, and this process can be reversed and transcended. This profound philosophical context can help us reshape our understanding of ourselves and the universe. And yes, there are several high-quality yoga practices and rituals where Kundalini is central, but more on that later. Catch you next time.